Neil Brown just has that it factor, I believe.
He's bought into the program.
Everybody in the Big 12 is going to know his name, and all the quarterbacks are going to feel his pain.
That underdog mentality's always been big for West Virginia.
We're just heartbroken that we were not good at our jobs.
He is the modern-day Don Nehlen.
Trust the climb.
And now it's time for the Country Roads Webcast.
Welcome into another edition of the Country Roads Webcast. As always, I'm your host, Jordan Cruz, joined by my co-host, Steven.
What's up, everybody?
And our other co-host, Bradley.
What's up, everybody?
So here we are, off-season already begun, gentlemen. We'll serve this as our season wrap-up show. We'll talk about some end-of-the-season stuff, the bowl game, and our, do a little update on our season predictions we did towards the end of the show. But might as well get the elephant in the room out of the way now. This will also serve as our WVU hires Graham Harrell episode. WVU does go and get a new offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, something I think a lot of people were clamoring for but didn't necessarily think would happen. I don't know about you guys, but it really surprised me because usually in these type of situations you can see or hear rumors about West Virginia looking for an offensive coordinator. I know I follow Football Scoop a lot, and they update that stuff and when it's rumored, but this never really had like a rumored stage or anything. Kind of came out of nowhere, and just the hire was boom announced by the university. Like that's how the news came out. So just kind of where were you guys? Did it surprise you? And what are your initial thoughts on the hire of Graham Harrell? What are you thinking, Bradley?
Yeah, so I was pretty unsure what to think about it first because I didn't know much about Graham Harrell. It definitely is not somebody I hadn't really looked into our offensive coordinator position a lot. I just kind of like trusted them to take care of it, and boy, did they take care of it. I was really excited to see how excited the fan base got, so that got me excited in turn. Like you guys were freaking out, and everybody else I talked to about WVU sports was freaking out. So I started looking into him, and I love him. I think he's going to be a good fit for our offense, and I think that we're finally going to start taking the cap off of that. Whatever's been holding down our offense, which honestly might have been Neil Brown. I think it takes a lot for him to step up and admit that he was probably dragging us down offensively, and to really just take his hands out of it. And I think it's only going to pay off for him.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that Neil Brown.
What about you, Steven?
He mentioned that in his statement to where he said that he takes full responsibility of the offense, not being as productive as they should have been this season. And I think that takes a leader to admit something like that, and to get a coach like Graham Harrell is a home run, in my opinion, because, I remember watching Graham Harrell play, back during, the Pat White era, and him and Michael Crabtree would just light up scoreboards. I remember one game specifically where I think they were playing Texas, and Crabtree catches the ball on the sideline, somehow stays in bounds for the final 5 to 10 yards, and and that's my main memory from him.
I remember that.
He was
that's crazy. I remember watching that too.
Great quarterback for that time, and I think the style of coaching that he brings to the table is a lot like that, and that's what makes me most excited is because he played and coached under Mike Leach, and anybody that's followed college football knows who Mike Leach is and how productive his offenses have been. So he's coached under him. Graham Harrell's offenses have been, if I'm not mistaken, pretty much top 25 almost every single year, and almost immediately better than what they were from the previous season when he's been brought in. And that's been the case at Washington State, North Texas, and now USC. And hopefully, and I do feel confident with the receivers that I know we lost a few receivers into the transfer portal, which I predicted, but I do believe that the receivers that we still have and possibly might get now that Graham Harrell is a coach at WVU, the sky's the limit for this offense next year, boys. And
absolutely,
what makes me really excited, and I don't want to sound like a broken record saying this, but if our defense can be as productive as they have been for the past couple of seasons, with all the talent we have coming back on that side of the ball, and our offense can make the turnaround and be good, it's hard to tell what West Virginia can be next year. And I still think at this point, West Virginia is probably around a 7 to 8 win football team. But I'm telling you right now, it's probably going to look a lot more. It's going to be a lot more exciting brand of football to watch, I believe, than what we have been seeing, especially on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. I think that I think you both mentioned it a little bit, but I think it speaks a lot of Neil Brown. Whether you've been on the train or you're kind of iffy, and a lot of people haven't been, but I think even those people were impressed by this because it was Neil Brown recognizing, saying, I step back and look at things. I realize the offense is what has kept us from winning some of these games, and that me being as a play caller is maybe not working out. So I'm going to step back, be a CEO of the program, and let Graham Harrell have this offense, call these plays. He's not going to be involved. Jared Parker, lightly involved now with the co-offensive coordinator, title maybe in name only, continues to be receivers coach. Chad Scott gets the title of run game coordinator and stays running backs coach. And the one guy looks like it's left out is Sean Reagan, who was the quarterbacks coach, unless, he would go to coach tight ends with that vacancy open as well, with Travis Trickett leaving to be the offensive coordinator at South Florida. But I don't think that's likely. So West Virginia probably still going to hire a tight end coach. So you're still going to see someone else added to this offensive staff that I think is getting a revamp and really needed a revamp. And I think you made a heck of a hire with Graham Harrell. As Steven said, successful everywhere he's been, top 10 offenses, top 25 offenses, and really knows how to put points on the board, which is what West Virginia needs to do because that's what they've been lacking. And I think Neil Brown seeing that and being humble enough to say, hey, what I'm doing is not working. Let me bring in someone else, run their offense, let them call these plays and see if we can win some more games. I think that's big. But I guess that's pretty much it as far as the addition of Graham Harrell. You guys want to talk about anything about Travis Trickett leaving, or who you guys think made West Virginia mad as tight end coach, or you guys think Sean Reagan's out? Anything else you guys want to add here?
I need to be more intelligent on the situation. I'm very upset that we're losing Travis Trickett. I'm very upset about that. But I haven't.
Yeah, I am.
But I've heard that Graham Harrell does have some decent pull around this area. That he has recruited this part of the country a little bit, so that makes me feel a little bit better. But we definitely need to replace our recruiting prowess that we lost out of Travis Trickett. We need to get another Southern Florida
And
guy
what's
down there.
what's still bothersome for me is we not only lost Travis Trickett this year, but we lose Jamal Adai last year. And in my opinion, he's one of the best recruiters that West Virginia's had in a very long time. And I think that was proven this year because, as mad as I am that we lost him, I do want to give a shout out to Jamal Adai for winning the national championship. That is well deserved props right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Georgia.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Can't be nothing but happy for the guy.
Definitely. I think I agree with you
Yeah.
guys.
Tyke Ball in the championship game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Smith too.
Georgia
Tyke
pulls
Smith
it off.
Also got a ring.
Yep, you love to see it. Mountaineers getting rings because it's once a Mountaineer, always a Mountaineer. I think that, like you guys said, losing Trickett really hurts because that's probably back-to-back years where you lose your best recruiter, losing Adai last year and then Trickett after this year. But can't be too mad at Trickett for wanting to go be an offensive coordinator. And I was upset at the time hearing it when I thought that Neil Brown wasn't going to make any changes on our offense and we were going to roll as is, just replacing Trickett. And then I see us hire Graham Harrell and something I didn't see coming at all, and really exciting hire, and kind of lessened the blow for me of losing Trickett. But I also think you still need to replace his recruiting, like you guys said. Harrell's a good recruiter, but I think whoever you hire to be tight ends coach should also be a really good recruiter, particularly maybe in that Florida area where Trickett had done such a good job. Because now you're going to be recruiting
one thing I do
against
want
him
to point
there
out
in the South Florida area.
For all of us on this show, for the past couple of seasons, I know for a fact that we have been preaching about West Virginia not being able to pay our assistant coaches enough to keep them around. And I just want to give props to Shane Lyons and Gordon Gee and everybody that made it possible for Graham Harrell to come here, because giving him $850,000 is a great way to start. And I think if you look across the board at places like Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, the teams that are consistently in the playoff and in the national title contention, I guarantee you, if you look on average, they pay their coaches anywhere from $700,000 to $900,000 a year. And I understand that they probably make a little bit more money, but West Virginia is not hurting for money that much to where they can't pay their assistant coaches. And I think that they just proved that with the hire of Graham Harrell. And that's one thing that I'm most excited about moving forward, is because we have been saying this for a long time, that's what you have to do to be able to retain these kind of caliber coaches on your coaching staff. And
And on that note, I feel like that this is the first time that the WVU is really taking a shot at it. They're like, okay, like this is what we have to do to be one of those big boy
Mhm.
programs. We've gotten our, facilities updated. We're at the top of the line right now. So if we want to, make the best use of that equipment, then we really need to finally sling our wallets a little bit. And it's not that I think that WVU is loaded with money. I think that we are okay on money, but I think that it's also a calculated risk. They've got to really, we're probably only going to get one shot at this. I mean, if this, to me, it feels like it's more of a buy-in on Neil Brown and what they believe he can do and what our football program can do. And so they're really taking a shot out there and being like, I think that we have the right head coach. We need to get the right pieces around him. But this might be the only shot that we get at this. If this fails, then WVU might have a couple real rough years following this. So I think it's really just gotta. And I think that also buys. Because I know Jordan brought up, just what was going on. I think that it also buys Neil Brown some more time. I think
Oh,
it gives him a
I'm
little bit more of a safety net that he did make a
Yep.
change and like admit to, struggling. It might buy him some more time. It
I
might buy
truly
him an
believe
extra
that if
year,
West
which might be
Virginia
all that
goes
he
another
needs to
six
finally have
with
all his
another
pieces in
6-win
place.
season this year, that Neil Brown will probably not be the head coach of WVU anymore. So I'm saying I want that to happen. I just
Yeah,
No, I agree.
Yep.
I think he
and I think
knows
truly
that
believe
this
it
is his
does.
make or break
probably
Because
year.
year 4 isn't supposed to be a build year. It's supposed to
Yeah.
be,
If
you're there
yeah.
year.
I know, but it's like one of those things you also got to hit with understanding that his 4 years have been anything but normal. I mean, you got your COVID year, and then he comes in on a short year, then he has a COVID year, and then the next year they have NIL deals and transfer portal is absolutely wreaking havoc and changing. I mean, you can't look at the transfer portal right now and not realize that it's changing college football right now. Like it's absolutely changing how teams work and how recruiting works. Like what Neil Brown was talking about weeks ago, you're not going to be able to have 5 scholarship quarterbacks, 10 scholarship running backs, 15 offensive linemen. It's just not going to happen anymore. Kids want to go places they want to go play. And so, the years that he's had to deal with change every single year, it's not like he's had the easiest like a normal 4 years of any kind of coaching that he's had up to those years. These have been something he's not even used to. It's a brand new world for him. And so you look at that and you look at the fact that we're still hanging around in there and he's still doing good and he's still just changing with the times. He's not getting sunk under the water. We're getting good transfers in, we're recruiting really hard and we're making big plays other places. It's kind of hard to still not be impressed of where we're at. And thank God that we didn't, tank to the bottom in those tumultuous years under a different head coach. So
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think that in both camps, it's if Neil has a bad year, I could definitely see them wanting to make a change, and I think that Neil knew that and not only knowing that next year's a big year, but also I think he heard the cries from the fan base and stuff, and then he sat back and took a step back and looked, hey, they're right, this offense isn't getting it done, and he said I need to do something not only to help my job and to help this program get better, but also to show these fans that I'm invested in making West Virginia great because to me him taking a step back shows that his ego is not bigger than West Virginia football. That he wants the program to continue to grow more so than he wants to show, hey, I'm good enough to do this, and just keep doing the same thing. The definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting different results. And I think that's big of him. And I think that with that, you've seen the fan base kind of come around a little bit and be like, okay, I'm maybe not saying trust the climb again yet. I've never really stopped saying it. I know you guys probably haven't either, but a lot of people, were really off that. And some people are like, I may be still trusting the climb. Let me see what happens this season. But with this offensive splash hire and, the other things they're doing to rework the offense, I think that
Yeah,
Neil's
and
really bought himself
I think
some
that
good
this
faith,
will
if
be
nothing
my
else.
make or break year for if I'm still on the Neil Brown train or not. But I honestly, at this point in time, I'm fully confident that this will be a successful season, and that's largely due to the fact that we've got Graham Harrell. But
Yeah.
I don't think that the program is necessarily in a bad spot. I think that if you look at the way the last season went, we went 2-4 in our first 6 games, and this is what a direct quote from Shane Lyons. We went 2-4 in the first 6 games, and then 4-2 in the second 6 games of the season, not counting the bowl game. And I think that can be viewed as a positive because
Right.
the second half of the season, people started to announce that they were transferring out, entering the transfer portal, we started losing, recruiting commitments that we had gotten that we were really excited about, pretty good ones too. And, that's when a lot of things should have fallen apart and West Virginia should be getting blown out on a consistent basis. But they did show some fight. And I don't know. I think our defense held a large majority of the season together, and our offense just didn't help them out. And if we get a home run like Graham Harrell in here to give our offense a boost and give it what West Virginia fans are used to seeing our offense play like, that can only get me excited because I just remember being good on offense and we didn't have anything on defense. And then as soon as we get, a good defense, and it reverses West Virginia. other than the years of Pat White and all those guys, I don't remember us having a good offense and defense at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, it's also, you got to think about it. The past 3 or 4 years, we've had probably an 8 to 10 win defense, really realistically. Like our team could have had 8 to 10 wins just play off of our defensive play if we would have had any kind of semblance of offense. And that would make me feel more comfortable going into the season if literally our whole offense next year is just going to be one big question mark other than our offensive line. And I think that that's, somewhat comforting, somewhat not comforting because it was our weakest spot last year. But our whole entire offense is just going to be a giant question mark next year, which
It
is
is
kind of exciting.
terrifying, but at the
But it's
same
also kind of
time,
terrifying.
it's exciting for me.
No, it is.
Nico
It is.
Graham, Lynn J. Dixon. There's a lot of big factors for
Yeah,
me that get me
it's
excited
both.
that we haven't really seen a lot at all, really.
I would be
And,
excited
yeah,
if we can get an exciting wide receiver transfer. If we can get somebody that I can just like look at and be like, okay, that wide receiver has got a chance. I want somebody tall. I know Caden Prather's a good 6'3", but if we could find a tight end that has some
yeah.
hands, maybe because I know
Brian
that we got one
Pollenday,
tight end
I
from
think his name,
Colorado, I think,
business.
somewhere out. Yeah,
Hollandy.
and yeah, but I think he's definitely more of a blocking tight end. So I definitely think that we
Yeah.
need some height in there somewhere. We've got to hit wide receiver at some point in time in the transfer portal.
No, I agree 100%. I think that they're definitely going to add at least one wide receiver. They may even add a couple, but it's a great segue into the next topic I did want to talk about. Transfers that have come out, transfers that have come in. We're talking about revamping the offense, and it's going to look different. With the scheme and stuff of Graham Harrell and him calling the plays will look different, but also it's going to be different personnel in there. Pretty much all your skill positions for the main part are going to be different. As you've people that transferred out. You lose Jarrett Dagey, Sean Ryan, Winston Wright, Isaiah Esdale, Letty Brown to graduation, and then T.J. Banks at tight end and Parker Moore along the offensive line, and then a couple defensive transfers and Jackie Matthews and Vandarius Cowan. A couple of those not surprises. Jackie Matthews and Sean Ryan walked on senior day, so I think a lot of people saw those coming. Vandarius Cowan, I think a lot of people knew was coming. But the offense, going to look different. And I think a lot of people have kind of been worried, oh my goodness, our leading receiver, Winston Wright left, our starting quarterback left, stuff like that. But to me, I think even before hiring Graham Harrell, I was kind of looking at it through a lens of Neil Brown. He came here, he built a good defense, and I think maybe he's looking, saying, on offense for 3 years, we've had pretty much the same players in all these skill positions doing the same things, and it's not working. Our offense has been struggling. And so I think, maybe he didn't say, hey, you need to leave, but, if they asked him and, he said, maybe you should, go try and look somewhere else. And I think he wanted to get fresh blood in there, not only in Graham Harrell calling the plays and things like that, but also maybe get some of these young guys a chance and get some new pieces at the skill position to see if they can't have more success on offense with new faces all around. What are you guys' thoughts on the transfers?
Yeah, I definitely think that we've definitely lost some crucial pieces, but I definitely think that I think it's time for new blood. I think that looking back on this year after now the season's over and I've been sitting back looking at it, thinking about it, I definitely think that Winston Wright was great, but he was our best wide receiver, but we lost him. But he really his stats didn't jump out this year, and he never really kind of like lived up to that hype that he had, building up to this year and even the year before that. And he's a great football player, and I'm sure Winston Wright's going to go ball out at Florida State. But I'm just ready to see new people in there, and I think that some of the Neil Brown guys that we've seen, like Reese Smith and Caden Prather, have been some of the more exciting players towards the end of the season. I think that they made more consistent plays at wide receiver. I mean, Reese Smith played a hell of a half a year of football there at the end, and he was making big plays when he needed to. And so I'm excited to see them step in. I'm really excited to see Bryce Ford Wheaton finally be he's been hyped up as the man in the room since he was a sophomore, you know, and now he's not, that young new face that's going to make these big plays. Now he's that old head that's in there, and he's really going to have control of that wide receiver locker room. It's going to be on him to be a leader, and it's going to be up to him to really push along these young guys and get them ready for playing on Saturdays. And I'm excited to see him in that role. I think he'll do really well there. I'm really curious to see if Sam Brown actually comes out of the transfer portal. He hasn't announced he's going anywhere yet, because I think he was kind of tired of sitting behind people, but now everybody else ahead of him is kind of gone. So unless they really just sever that tie between him and Neil Brown, because I know Neil Brown had talked about a few guys just up and leaving without really, talking to him about it or discussing about it or, reaching out about it. And I think that Sam Brown may have been one of those guys that was a little hot headed and, kind of put his foot out the door earliest. Maybe that is a tie that's gone, but yeah. And yeah, that's how I feel about the transfers.
Yeah, he still
It's time
could
for
come
some
back. I mean, we
new picks.
saw Mike O'Laughlin went into the transfer portal. What was it? Right after Dana left, I believe it was, and then ended up coming back. And he's still been, a heck of a player and been a key part of the team. So you never know. He definitely could still come back, and I think the opportunity definitely is there because West Virginia needs some receivers. But what about you, Stephen? Anything you want to add as far as the people that have transferred
Yeah,
out
I think I
since kind of the
have
end of
to
the
agree.
season?
I think that I'm ready to see some new faces. As talented as Winston Wright and Isaiah Esdale and a lot of these guys on this list were. I think a lot of the fan base is lying if they're saying that they're not excited that Jared Deggy just left. And Vandarius Cowan, as high as I was up on him, I've seen a lot of classless
Facts.
plays out of Vandarius. I don't mean to disrespect anybody, now that they're leaving, but I think it's probably yeah, and not so
A lot of
not
targeted
so
plays, but he
accidental
can go,
looking
yeah,
targeting plays either. They
personal
were
fouls.
pretty blatant in my view of things. So maybe that's positive to get somebody like that out of the program. He might.
I think he'll thrive at
But
Maryland.
yeah, I'm excited for these newer guys. I think that the talent we've seen Neil Brown bring in is, maybe not better, but they looked like they had the potential to be a lot better than the talent that was already on the field. You mentioned Caden Prather. I like the product the product of football that Winston Wright brought to the game. But there were times in the season where he just didn't. It just wasn't there in certain games. He couldn't. There was a lot of drop passes, and no, that's largely due to probably Jared Deggy. But this is the reason that I called. I predicted there would be at least four receivers in the transfer portal, because there's a lot of guys that feel like they should be in position to make catches, and there was a lot of guys that were wide open on plays that were completely missed. And the world of a wide receiver today is if you're standing there wide open and you're not getting looks, and the offense is especially not being successful while you're not getting thrown the ball while you're wide open, you're not going to stand there and just wait out those 4 years while you could go elsewhere and have a better quarterback and get you a better look at going professional or whatever you want to do. And so I don't know. I think the transfer portal this year for West Virginia is a huge positive, especially with the transfers that you're already seeing West Virginia get out of the portal. And it's still a little bit early, so I think West Virginia's got potential to get maybe one or two receivers from the portal and a tight end. Hopefully, because I think even with Mike O'Laughlin and this Brian Pollenday guy, I still think we need some depth at that position. That's one position I think West Virginia's always lacked. Yeah.
We need somebody with some hands. I mean, even though Michael Laughlin made some catches there towards the end of the season.
I think Corbin Page. I think Corbin Page. I know he's a true freshman, and it's hard for true freshmen to factor in.
Sure.
But physically, he's ready. He's got the size. Top player in the state of West Virginia. I think that he might. If they don't end up adding a third
Yeah.
tight end, I think he could factor in as your third tight end because, like we said, Paul and D, who we added, is more of a blocker, and I think Corbin Page is a bit of both, kind of like Mike O. So if we don't add anyone else, I do like the upside of Corbin Page. That being said, I did want to comment on, what, Steven was talking about when he was talking about certain players, doing certain things or what have you, transfer wise. And, it's because not necessarily every transfer that leaves is a bad thing. Cause I know you've heard Shane Lyons mention it and Neil Brown mention it. They're not going to say which players, and it may not be any of these players that we just named. I'm not saying that necessarily, but there's some players that, they've turned them energy vampires. They suck the energy out of the locker room. They bring down the other guys and things like that. And if you can get rid of those, makes your team better. Team chemistry better, everything flow better. You need to have everyone in that room having full buy-in and trust in the climb if you want to make that climb. And so I think they even have a sign above the locker room they said that says believe or leave. And so I think if guys aren't bought in, they're not afraid to say. All right, well, find you somewhere else, and we're going to get somebody here that does believe and do this thing and build this thing up. And so that's just kind of I've been the glass half full on those transfers because I think sometimes it's addition by subtraction.
Yeah, I definitely think transfers are a bit of positive for us. I think that it gives Neil Brown like this like little specific chance to like nitpick and like pick out some guys that he really appreciates. Because it's honestly like free agency, so we can honestly look at those guys that have like varying years of eligibility left that have a chance to come in. And I think Neil Brown he had said a couple weeks ago. I think it was I brought it up at one point in time recently, his interview where he was talking about how he thinks that some of his first year recruiting class that he had done in 2019, he said he thinks that they were misses, that he'd just gotten some people that have really fit the brand of football that WVU's been trying to build and that really necessarily syncs up with WVU football. And I think that this is kind of what we're seeing play out, as Neil Brown just saying. These weren't necessarily the program guys that we needed. Not necessarily that they don't fit they're bad guys, but don't fit the brand that we're trying to build and the kind of energy and buy-in that we need. And so I think that's what we're starting to see some of that fallout where Neil Brown was talking about. He just had some complete misses on his first year recruiting class, and now he's got a better understanding of where we're at, where we want to be, and the kind of people that we need. So I think the transfer portal allows them to find those guys that are looking for that kind of home that fit with us, and then he can also get them at varying years to where he can fill the needs that we need with older guys and give us a year or two to buffer before we go recruiting them out of high school.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. I think the transfer portal, a lot of people want to look at it from one side and, they're either against it or for it. And I think there's a lot of negatives and positives involved with it. And it's a great segue into talking about the transfers that West Virginia has brought in so far in this offseason. Some of them we've talked about previously during the signing day recap, but Lynn J. Dixon, the running back from Clemson, I think he's a guy that's going to, be a factor right away. Him and Tony Mathis probably looking at your top guys there at running back. He's a little bit more speedy, a little bit more twitchy, can break a long run. So you can have him as the speed guy and Tony Mathis as the power guy. I think that's a great pickup. And then you got Zakai Lawton from Cincinnati, a West Virginia guy that can provide you some depth on the defensive line. Tight end Brian Pollandy, who we talked about from Colorado State. I believe he's 6'5", 250 or something like that. Great blocking tight end, specifically a blocker. And then you got a corner in Marcus Floyd from Murray State. He was an FCS All-American at corner, which, if you want a comparison for that, Charles Woods was an FCS All-American before he came to West Virginia last season, and we saw him have a great season, tied for the lead in interceptions on the team. So Marcus Floyd's definitely a great pickup for West Virginia to provide depth there at corner. And then, Neil Brown has said they're going to add definitely a few more from the portal. They have like about 8 scholarships remaining, I believe. They definitely said specifically he had mentioned they want to add a kickoff specialist, which I think is great because I think not being able to kick the ball out of the end zone and kicking it out of bounds really hurt our special teams numbers this year and our field position battles. We lost a lot of those because of that. They want to add a veteran in the secondary. I'm guessing probably at safety where we lost so much there. Probably somebody on the offensive line and defensive line, and then as we said, at least one wide receiver, if not two. And he didn't rule out adding another quarterback, but I think if you don't see that soon, you won't see that till after the spring. So that being said, what are your guys' thoughts on some of these guys that have transferred in, or what you think West Virginia may add in the transfer
You
portal
know, I
moving
like a
forward?
lot of
What
what
do you
I've
think,
seen
Stephen?
out of the transfer portal. You know, I mentioned Lynn J. Dixon. I think that Tony Mathis is a stud of a running back, but it only helps if you can add depth at that position, and I think that that's what that does. Um, you know, I think that we're going to have to add probably an offensive lineman or two if we're going to be able to stay competitive up front, because I think West Virginia didn't prove to me that they could hold their own, you know, up front last year. And you get a lot of talent back from what you had last year. I think it would have helped to get Parker Moore back, but I think that would be something that West Virginia could really benefit from if they could get that out of the transfer portal. I think defensively, you know, you get a defensive lineman and Zaquay Lawton, but you know, I don't think we really needed somebody on that side of the or you know, on the defensive line more than we need somebody on the offensive line. I think we're going to need to get somebody up front to be able to stay competitive up there, I guess.
No, absolutely. You gotta build from the trenches, and that's something Neil Brown's talked about a lot throughout. Is if you look at the top teams in the conference, the one thing they have in common is great defensive lines, great offensive lines, and I think they've done a good job of doing that. And I think two of Big Neil's biggest recruiting wins, I think this offseason have been recruiting Josh Chandler Samito to return, who had said he definitely wasn't coming back to come back at linebacker, and then of course Dante Still's coming back for one more year as well. And that defense brings back pretty much everyone except for your safeties now, and so that's big, I think, for the defense. And as we said, if the offense can improve, we're gonna have a pretty good team. But anything you guys want to talk about as far as those two guys returning, or players West Virginia's brought in, before we talk a little bit about our season prediction results and a little bit about the
I want to
bowl
ask you
game end of
guys.
season, if you guys want?
Go ahead, Bradley. I got a big question
Yeah,
for you
just a little
guys.
bit. Go ahead, Tim. Okay, well, then
Okay.
let me just say my piece in. Okay, so I think Neil Brown would be dumb if he didn't get in touch with Dreshawn Miller. I think that just giving the guy a chance and being like, hey, if you want to come back to WVU, he played really good ball here. He had a year to go down this, learn some stuff at Auburn. He didn't break the two deep, but the guy is still really talented at DB, and I think that bringing him back would show a lot and speak a lot on our behalf of just because you leave doesn't mean once a mountaineer always a mountaineer kind of mentality. And I think that that's kind of a position that we need somebody in right now, and he could come in and even find himself in a leadership position. I know it sounds kind of weird to have a guy that left, come back into a leadership position, but that's kind of a need that we would need. So I would think we'd be dumb to not get in talk with him. And then I think that we're going to go after. I think we need somebody to back up Brandon Yates over there. I think that's offensive lineman that we should be looking for is another left tackle to kind of bulk up that depth that we need over there.
All right. Well, I got a
Yeah.
question for you guys. With the big reveal last night at the basketball game,
Okay.
who's our starting
Lay it on
quarterback
me.
next year? Who you got?
Uh,
Who you got?
Here we go.
I want to know.
Listen, I'm I'm I don't want to speak badly about somebody that we may add or anything like that, but it's just hard for me to get excited about West Virginia adding a quarterback from Shepherd. I know he was, Division II Player of the Year, whatever, but when there's the options that are out there, I don't know if you're bringing him in just for depth. The only way that I see that they're looking at him is just because purely experience in college, where you have three guys that have never started a college football game before. I think they've thrown maybe a combined 30 passes, with both those coming between Green and Crowder. Obviously, with Nico going to be a true freshman. Um, I don't know. I think, adding, Tyson Badgett, who we're talking about, in case you don't know, but I'm sure most people do, was the quarterback of Martinsburg back in high school, went to Shepherd, Division II National Player of the Year this past season. But the one thing that's kind of made me change my tune on that a little bit is I found out that about Bailey Zappi, the quarterback this season from Western Kentucky that broke this NCAA record for passing yards in a season and the NCAA record for passing touchdowns in a season, broke the records that Joe Burrow set just a couple years back. Came from as a Division II transfer from Houston Baptist. Western Kentucky went and found him, got him from Houston Baptist. Came there this year, broke the NCAA records. So I'm not saying that Tyson Badgett's going to do that. Obviously, I don't even know if he'd win the job. In my opinion, I don't think he would. That's just me, but that does make me a little bit, less sad that it's not another quarterback that was rumored that was visiting at the WVU basketball game last night. But if I had to pick right now who starts next season, if we don't bring in a transfer or if Badgett even comes in, I'm going to probably say Nico. I think he's got the thing that you need to start as a true freshman, something rare that you don't see. He'd be the first, true freshman to start at quarterback at West Virginia since 1974, I believe. But that just shows you the kind of player that he is. But, also, it just depends because I think bringing in Graham Harrell gives it a different look. I think if it was Neal, you might have to say it would be Goose or Badgett if he comes in. But I think Graham's going to be the guy to decide now. And you saw him last season be able to develop a true freshman in Jackson Dart, who is now in the transfer portal. And when he had to take over last season for USC, and he had a great year with him. So I think you could definitely see Nico as the starting quarterback. Right now, if you're making me pick, that's who I'm going with.
Go ahead, Bradley.
What about you guys?
Okay, so first
Tyson
we'll
Badgett.
talk about Badgett, right? Is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
I might keep forgetting it. I would give him a preferred. I've been open and honest about this. I'd give him a preferred walk-on spot. I think that would be really nice to have just some extra depth in our quarterback room sitting there. I don't know if that's something that kid would take, but that's what I would give him. I don't think with the 3 scholarship quarterbacks that we have that if we give, I just don't see it happening. I mean, he could be our own little Georgia Bulldog story in 5 years when he's our second string quarterback and he gets a chance to go in because our starting quarterback's hurt. I just don't see that happening. So I'll move over to a little bit more spicier topics. Also, yeah, I talked to some guy on Twitter and he was talking about how he doesn't understand why people are. I'll go ahead and tell you. I think our starter next year is Nico Marchiol. I am so bought in on that guy. I think he is WVU program through and through, which really excites me about him. But I'll get back to him in a second. Somebody had said that they didn't know why people were so hype on Nico Marchiol when he hasn't played a game of college football in his life yet. But Stephen Bagnett, he's played a year of college ball and we've seen what he can do. They're like, I don't know why you guys wouldn't want that. And I was like, Nico Marchiol has played against more Division I athletes in his one game against Bishop Gorman
Who's Stephen Bagnett?
than Stephen Bagnett has played Division I players in his whole entire college career.
Tyson
There's
Badgett.
no comparison. Is his first name not Stephen? See, Badge.
I didn't even. I didn't even pick up on it. I thought he was saying something about you, Stephen. I thought no. I
just knew he said he didn't know his name. So.
Is that why I let you choke it up?
That's funny.
Anyway, yeah, I don't get that. On to Jackson Dart. I like Jackson Dart, and I'll take him in a heartbeat if he wants to come to WVU.
Oh, absolutely.
He'd be the highest rated quarterback we've ever gotten. But if he comes to WVU, I still will be fully bought in and behind Nico Marchiol 100% and cheering for him to get the starting job. And I think that if he won it over someone like Jackson Dart, it speaks more to how great of a player Nico Marchiol is and how he is probably the biggest gem in the class of 2022. And I know I'm lopping a lot on a kid as a freshman, but I don't care if he comes out and doesn't give me his best game. It's a kid that I want to buy into. And I feel like that's one of those guys that you get like 10 times.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think that, the main reason I asked that question is because earlier this year, I predicted that as well, that Nico was going to be the starting quarterback for West Virginia. And both of you fools told me that I was just – both of you fools told me that I was crazy for saying that. But no, I think that –
I don't think I told you were crazy. At least I didn't say that, Jarrett Doege was coming back and was going to start.
Yeah, me and Cruz kind of got high up on him that one week. That was a
23 season.
That's a bad week.
Don't know who could have.
Yeah, that's crazy. I don't know. I don't know who said that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Things look bad.
Man, we must have been at a real low point in life.
But I think that Nico has something that we haven't I don't really think ever seen out of a recruit. I don't ever remember West Virginia fans or college football fans in general following a recruit this closely their senior season of high school football. Especially from a player across the country. We've seen it. I did it with Sean Martin when he went to Bluefield, and I'm sure that there's been people that follow someone that lives close to them that might have committed to WVU. But just to follow a general recruit this closely, I mean, I don't remember the last time that such a widespread amount of people in the fan base followed a recruit that closely. And so that tells me that the one thing that I worried about with Nico this whole season was, he's going to do so well that he's going to commit somewhere else. That someone else is going to notice how well this kid's playing. He's on ESPN every other week. And all you see from him is WVU. I can't wait. You know what I mean? I can't wait to get to WVU. I'm so excited about it. I'm so bought in. He's so loyal to the program already, and he's already played against more Division I talent than a lot of people that play that position. I don't know. It's hard for me to put into words just how ready I think Nico already is to play this position. I mean, going from Hamilton High School in Arizona is going to be a little bit different than playing in the Big 12 Conference. But when you're playing against the likes of Bishop Gorman, who has Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia recruits and Oklahoma recruits and LSU recruits on a yearly basis, I think you're going to be okay with starting someone like that as a true freshman, because I think they've already been tested and they know what they're getting themselves into. It's not the same thing as starting someone who's played against regular high school talent. And I don't mean to discredit, anyone, but facts are facts. People who play against better talent are going to be better football players if they're tested and play that well against those better football players. That's why Alabama gets those kind of recruits every year, because those recruits have been tested and they've played against those kind of tough competition. That's why when they get into a position where they play against tough competition, they've already been tested and this isn't a new world for them. And I think that's a lot of what you get out of, especially people that get recruited out, to West Virginia, is those guys are used to being the man on their football team. Maybe them and maybe one or two other guys on the football team are as talented as them. Whereas, these other big time recruits are used to being, on a whole football team with people as talented as them, and then facing that every week. And so that to me is what makes me so excited about Nico, is not only is he real deal talent, he's also bought into the program, and we, quite possibly, hopefully, will get him for all 4 years, which is a very rare thing today in college football, like we've all been saying.
I think a good way to think about it is the fact that you could put anybody in into Division One. You could put anybody into his spot,
Right.
and they're going to make mistakes. But you can't put everybody into his spot and they're going to make plays. That's the one thing looking at Nico is I know when he comes in, he's going to make plays. He's going to make mistakes. Yeah, of course, everybody is. Nobody's imperfect. But he's a guy that you look at and he's going to come in and he's
right.
going
The only
to
player
make plays.
I can remember
everybody's
sitting
gonna
and
make
watching a
nice
football
one.
game, and we could be down in that game, and I would think, well, what's he going to do? There's two people that I remember watching games and thinking, well, something's going to happen. They're going to make a play. You're just curious to see how that play is going to be made. And I thought that with Pat White, and I thought that with Will Greer, and both of them. It was just exciting to watch how it would unfold. You knew it would always unfold, but you never knew how.
Mm-hmm.
And with Pat White, he did it with his feet. With Will Greer, he did it with his arm. And I think Nico's going to be a little bit of touch of both, and that's what makes me really excited about him too.
Yeah, well said. I think that he's got the highest ceiling of probably anyone on the offense and anyone West Virginia's brought in quite some time. And as Steven said, the fan favorite already before he even stepped on campus. And I think he has good leadership qualities. And it's rare for a true freshman to do it at quarterback and start, but I think he has the capability to and the intangibles to be able to do it. He's got it factor about him, and I think that if he does, maybe struggles, early a little bit, but he's going to, pick it up. And if he comes out in that first game on the road as a starter and beats Pitt, in the backyard brawl, that'll be the thing of legend, a true freshman starting on the road and winning a rivalry game. And so his legend will just begin right away if he does it. But I'm really excited to see it, moving forward. That being said, we've talked a little bit about the future, about the offseason moves West Virginia's made, the players they brought in, the splash home run coaching hire of Graham Harrell, which we're really excited about, and excited about this team moving forward with, Chandler Smito and Dante Stills coming back on defense and returning a great defense and the capability of having a good offense. I equate it to what Baylor did. You look at Baylor 2 years ago; they went 2-7. They bring in Jeff Grimes to be their offensive coordinator from BYU, fix their offense to go with a good defense, and they win the Big 12 conference this year, win the Big 12 title game, and go win a New Year's Six bowl as well. So, not saying West Virginia is going to do that, but I think West Virginia has the capability to be a really good football team if this hire works as well as the Jeff Grimes hire did for Baylor at offensive coordinator. And I think Graham Harrell has that ability to turn this into an exciting brand of football. That being said, let's take a look back at this past season. We haven't really talked too much since the end of the season other than the signing day recap. So West Virginia finished, 2021 6-7 with a loss in the bowl game to Minnesota, pretty good Minnesota team. Um, not exactly the results we wanted for the season. Neil Brown's first bowl game loss, but it was a tough matchup for West Virginia, I think. That being said, anything you guys want to add on as far as the 2021 season, how it ended, the bowl game, before we get into, kind of our season predictions? We did our over-under and our numbers predictions and see how those
No,
panned out here to close things out.
I think the season was a disappointment in my mind. I think that I said that at the beginning of the season, at the season prediction roundtable, that if it's anything less than 7 wins, then it would be a disappointment in my mind. And in my mind, it was a disappointment. I think West Virginia could have and should have been better offensively. Defensively, I liked what I seen, just like I have the last couple seasons. But, now that we've got these hires, I'm excited for what the offense holds, but the offense needs to be better, and they just flat out weren't. And they never showed any progression throughout the season in my mind other than 1 or 2 games, and then they regressed immediately after. So, disappointment in my mind, yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely disappointing, especially with the bowl loss. It makes it even worse, probably. I mean, especially coming from a man that said we are going to go 10-2 at the beginning of the season is definitely a bit of a disappointment for me. Even though I did do the best in the roundtable prediction because I got our
You did.
losses right, I think is what really helped me out there. Is I got our Oklahoma and Oklahoma State losses right, um, and I got our Texas win right, which was I picked that one out too. Um, maybe even Iowa State. I don't know, but yeah, it was definitely a disappointment. And I think that our offense has been the same since Neil Brown came in. It wasn't just this year; it's just been stagnant. So, um, I still think that we got great potential going on, but yeah, 2021 was a bit of a disappointment, especially when I thought we had. Uh, I definitely won't be leaving in coach speak as much this summer. I'll definitely be
No.
making sure I keep control on my excitement, and definitely my eyes will be pointing towards the spring game because I think that'll be the first time that we actually get to see if this offense is going to have flashes of working or not. It's going to be a lot of timing things. Are our wide receivers getting the ball when they're supposed to be, type stuff. But yeah, 2021, bit of a disappointing season.
Yeah, I think that's well put by both you guys. Disappointing is a good word. I think we all had high expectations going in because, like Bradley said, the coach speak kind of gave us those high expectations and played into those. And I think that the team was not as good as the coaches thought they were going to be either. I think the coaches were kind of in the same boat as us and were surprised by how things went. I think certain players, were maybe good, really good in practice, good scrimmage players, and then on game day kind of got the deer in the headlights thing going, and that hurt us a little bit. And I think that the one positive, I'm going to look on a positive side, is um, we haven't got blown out a lot under Neil Brown, even when we've been real bad. I know a couple games this season we did, but most games we're right in there, and a lot of that is credit to our defense and the good defense they've built, which is why them trying to do the same thing and rebuild the offense is so exciting because they've shown they can build a good unit on one side of the ball, and if they can show to do the same on the other side when they try something different, then you can have a really good football team. But yeah, I think overall 2021 disappointing is the best way to put it. Hard to have a losing season. Definitely got to have a winning season this year if you're Neil Brown or you're on the hot seat, I guess. If not, I think right now he's bought himself some good faith, as I said, with the hire and what he's doing, trying to rebuild the offense. It's to be seen, though. Still trusting the climb, but 2022, a very big year after like you guys said, 2021 was disappointing. But looking back at those season, at some numbers, I know we did, our over-unders, kind of our superlative predictions and, some yardage predictions in our season prediction roundtable as we always do preseason. I wanted to start kind of looking back on those and just having some fun, at how close we were, or how wrong we were, which I usually am. But anyways, Dagies passing yards, we did an over under of 3,000. Bradley took the over, I took the over, Steven took the under. Actual result,
Right on.
3,048 yards, slightly over. Me and Bradley right, Steven incorrect.
Was granted we got that because our running game was
48
non-existent.
yards.
We
Yeah,
got that
that's
because that's all
true.
we could do.
That's
and
true.
It was
I don't think I was right in any of my
all 10-yard
predictions.
passes. 310-yard passes.
Nope.
Correct predictions
I
were
got
few and far
one right.
between for all of us.
Got the leading tackler.
Yeah, that being said about the rushing offense, leads me into the next one. Letty Brown's rushing yards, which we all thought, that was going to be the strength of the team. We were all super high on Letty. Bradley had 1,500 yards. Steven said over 1,500. I think, if I remember right, you said
He
he would be pushing
did
2,000.
rush for
I
over
went with
2,000
1,200.
yards this
Actual
year
result,
for his
1,065.
career. Yeah,
For
duh.
his career. Oh, that's what you meant.
You
Oh, I'm
think I
sorry. I
would
didn't
predict
yeah,
him
for
to
his
rush for
career.
2,000 yards in a season? That's silly. That's yeah.
Yeah, come on. Who would
Who
do that,
predicts
right?
this stuff?
Yeah.
And then our last prediction on offense was for receiving leaders. We all shared the same one, and that was Winston Wright to lead the team in receptions and Bryce Ford Wheaton to lead in yards. And actually, Winston Wright ended up leading in both with 688 yards and 63 receptions. But I do want to add Bryce Ford Wheaton and Sam James both had 42 catches apiece with 575 for Bryce Ford Wheaton and 505 yards for Sam James. Bryce Ford Wheaton and Sam James both looking like they're coming back. I know Ford Wheaton was iffy, but it seems like this offensive coordinator hire may have made him want to come back as well, which will be nice. But Winston Wright leaving. But any thoughts on the receiving yardage prediction? That's one that we at least all got partially right with Winston Wright leading in receptions.
Really sad about Winston Wright leaving. Yeah, mostly because he's leaving for Florida State, and he changed our fans to Florida State fans in his little picture. Yeah,
that was a weird Photoshop edit.
Not okay in my mind.
Yeah.
I hate Florida State. I'm not shy about it. If any Florida State fans are watching, I hate you. Okay? You're not welcome here.
Not a fan. Go Gators. Defensive predictions, leading tackler, we actually all got this one right as well because all three of us said Josh Chandler-Samito, and Josh Chandler-Samito did lead the team, and he finished with 110 tackles. Hell of a year for Josh Chandler-Samito, and I think great news that he's returning next season. You get a senior leader that really kind of turned into the vocal leader of that defense.
Thank you, Big 12, for shafting him. Thank you, Big 12, for not giving him awards.
Ridiculous.
Thank you, Big 12, for pissing him off. Thank you, Big 12. Appreciate you.
As always, Big 12 disappoints yet again.
That was absolutely ridiculous. That man didn't get awards.
Yep, you know how that goes, though. Hopefully next year they make up for it and recognize him because I feel like he's going to have another great season, and it's good that we got that middle linebacker back. Looking at another defensive prediction, sacks leader. Bradley went with Akeem Mesidor. Steven went with Akeem Mesidor. I foolishly went with Vandarius Cowan. Whatever.
How many sacks did he have?
We won't talk about
How many
that. We'll just
sacks
put
did he
that
have,
little guy in
please?
the corner. We won't talk about that little guy over there.
How many
did he even have? Did he even have one? I don't know. I didn't even look it up because I don't even know. I don't remember him having one. He may have had
How
one.
many yards did he give to the other team? How many yards
upwards of triple digits, probably.
Yeah.
The actual results of the sacks leaders was Dante Stills ended up leading the team with 7 sacks. Taj Alston with surprising breakout year with 5 sacks for him, and then Akeem Mesidor with 4.5. So defensive line, as they have in lately since Neil Brown has been the coach, and Jordan Leslie's been leading this defense, they perform great yet again, and you get those guys all back next season. So that's the one big thing that I think's going to lead to, I think, a really good season next year potentially is the defensive line is
Yep.
going to be a huge strength yet again.
Absolutely. Hey, what does it make you feel like, Cruz, that your lockdown corner, Daryl Porter, has the same amount of interceptions this year as Darius Stills? Dante Stills,
Well,
Both of them, actually.
here's what I have to say about that is he played well. He had early in the season he had his lumps, but I think he had the one interception. But if you remember, Jackie Matthews got his interception
yeah,
off
he
a Daryl
did.
Porter tip where Daryl Porter dove and should have intercepted the ball, but it went through his arms and Jackie Matthews had it. So technically he could have been tied
Coulda,
for the
woulda,
lead on the team.
shoulda.
That's my rebuttal.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Daryl Porter and Dante Stills both had one interception on the game or on the
Which
season.
leads us into the interceptions. Yeah, absolutely. That's true. That's true. I mean, that's the way it is. But in my mind, it could have been the other way. So I still lock down corner, and I'm excited for him next season. That being said, our interception leader results. Bradley picked Scotty Young. Me and Steven both picked Alonzo Adai. All incorrect on this one, as 3 players shared the lead. Josh Chandler, Samito, Charles Woods, and Sean Mahone with 2. As we said, Dante Stills and Daryl Porter both had 1, and so did Jackie Matthews.
Yeah.
I definitely think we need to get
That's
some more
what hurt with
interceptions
Tyke
next
leaving,
season
I
for
think.
sure, looking at those numbers. But
Yeah, true.
yeah, I agree. And, Jershon too, if you want to add him. That being said, we'll talk about our final prediction for West Virginia to finish in the standings that we predicted in the season predictions. We all picked not we all did. Me and Bradley both picked 3rd, and Stephen picked 4th. Actually, West Virginia finished better than I thought they did. They finished 5th, so still in the top half there of the conference. I think it may have been tied for 5th. I don't remember, but 5th in the Big 12. So we weren't as far off as I thought we were. I know we said disappointing season, but when I saw that, I was like, well, actually, at least we were up there a little bit. I think we're closer than some people realize, but further away than we'd like to be with how disappointing this season was.
Yep. It
Yeah,
sucks.
for sure. Definitely when it felt like we were in the bottom 3 of the conference to come out 5th, I'll take it.
Yeah, with especially with the way the year started, I'll take a 5th place finish. But I think next year you got to finish 4th or higher for sure. Is what you're looking at. Ideally, I would like 3rd or higher, but we'll see what happens with this offensive revamp and moving forward. But then we did a conference championship game prediction. Bradley picked Oklahoma over Iowa State. I've also picked Oklahoma over Iowa State. Steven with the same Big 12 title game prediction, but he went.
Thought they were going to be
he
good,
went Iowa
man.
State beating Oklahoma, and then actually what ended up happening was, I think Iowa State was maybe the most disappointing team in the conference this year. A lot of people were
100%.
bought in on those, and didn't work out to be a good season. As we saw Baylor actually win the Big 12 championship, defeating Oklahoma State, 2 really good teams there in Baylor and Oklahoma State, and the 2 teams that West Virginia struggled against the most were the 2 best teams in the conference. Then finally, we did a college football playoff prediction. Bradley had Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State. Stephen had Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, and I had Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma. Playoff teams ended up being Alabama, Michigan, Georgia, and Cincinnati, with Georgia beating Bama in the national championship game a few days ago. So that's kind of a wrap up on our season predictions, a little update on how terrible we did. You got anything you guys want to add as far as season prediction
predicted
results?
right. I predicted Oklahoma not to make it to the playoff this year, and I had Alabama and Georgia in there. So I'm a guru.
And you did have that. You did do that. You did do that. Well, I don't know if I'd go that far, but
that's why I never can make bets.
Hey man, you're just as good as the next guy. That's for sure.
Yeah. I was going to bet money on the Alabama
it's just a
Georgia
luck game, really.
I'm so glad I did. I would have bet my money on Bama, so I'd have lost.
Yeah.
No, I think Georgia threw
the SEC national championship game.
Alabama
That's what it's turned into.
Yeah,
You boys think there's any
I mean,
validity to the
basically that's
fact
what
that
it was.
they'll secede from
That's
the
what it was.
NCAA
It was
eventually?
for
It'll
the
be the
SEC
SEC
getting.
versus the rest of college football.
Yep. Shout out
I
to the
think
SEC
Other
for
than the
losing
ones
all
that
of the bowl
mattered.
games. Made me
Yeah.
feel good.
I think that I don't know if the SEC itself will be the one, but I think the Power Five conferences all may eventually do that. But the SEC may be the first one to do it. But I think that's what it's
See,
going
I'm
to
caught in the
eventually. Is
middle.
the
I'm
Power
caught in the
Five is
middle
going to do their
between
own
being a
thing probably.
traditionalist and not wanting that to happen, and being like, okay, I'm tired of them taking everything. We should have a national championship, and then and whatever they do.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm about the same. Yeah, I don't know what to think of it. It's definitely different. Definitely, college
Yeah,
football
it's
is
going to be
a changing
different.
game, or game that's
It
changing a
already
lot
is, but
right
it's going
now.
to be a lot different in the next 5 to 10 years too. I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
NIL deals and transfers are changing up the game.
Yeah, absolutely,
Like I
and it
wish you guys
happened.
could have seen me just like trying to explain to my roommate that doesn't watch football what was going on. I was like, so listen, sir, it all
Hey,
started when
isn't
Lincoln
that kind of
Riley decided
crazy?
to go to USC.
If Caleb if Caleb
Actually,
Williamson
it all
goes
started with
to
NIL. It
USC,
all
that
started
will
with
mean
NIL.
that both of Oklahoma's quarterbacks last year left to go to USC on
He's
opposite
going
coasts. Exactly. Yeah, isn't that wild?
two different
And
USCs.
their
Yeah.
and their freshman and their true freshman high school recruit that left Oklahoma to go to USC quarterback.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Oklahoma has been ruined. They're going to have a down year next year, guaranteed.
They
Yeah,
will
I think
be,
that they
but
might be in
As far
I
as
for
out
a
there.
am going to
rebuilding
go
type
ahead and
year,
say
but
that
we'll see.
now.
Hopefully,
I
they could
thought Bob
surprise us. But
Stoops leaving was going to
Remember what the
hurt
Big 12
Oklahoma in a tremendous way, and then they brought in Lincoln Riley was already there, but Lincoln Riley did not miss a beat. And when Lincoln Riley left, I thought, okay, they're definitely going to fall off.
that's
And
true.
then they hired
So, you
Brent
know, this is
Venables. And when
different.
Brent Venables was the coach there before, I mean, you guys can go back and watch it if you want to. I've only heard about it. I've never really seen it, but I heard that West Virginia beat Brent Venables defense in the Fiesta Bowl when they beat Oklahoma that year. So
Mhm. I'm just saying they. Well, yeah, you're definitely right. It was a good win.
I'm pretty sure that's almost what
yeah,
he
they were
got
pissed.
fired not
They were
long
mad
after
at
that
him.
from Oklahoma. Then it ended up going to
Mhm.
Clemson. That's how he ended up at Clemson. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
But it's not. It's not just Lincoln Riley leaving. I mean, literally, all of what Oklahoma was as a program left. I mean, they lost so many players. And they didn't just lose, any players. They lost their players. I mean, they lost their team. And not only did they lose their team, they lost the kids that they were bringing in to replace those guys. Like, not only did they lose their past and their present, they lost their future too. Like Oklahoma's, they're trying to make up for it in recruiting, but I think that that's just forced them to go back to some guys that they didn't really give looks to and offer scholarships to guys that they
Don't get
didn't
me
look to in the
wrong.
first place. And
I will enjoy
I
it
don't
no
know. I just feel
less,
like
but
Oklahoma's going to be struggling next year.
I
It's
would
going to
have
be really
rather
tough.
beat them last year with the way that their team was than to not beat them all of those years and then then they become
We should
subpar
have.
and then we finally beat them. Yeah, I would have much rather beat them
Beat them
last
on a
year.
down year.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard. Yeah, that's
Better
true.
late than never.
That is
I'll
true.
take a win over Oklahoma whenever I can get
And
it.
West Virginia does have a great track record against Brent Venables defenses. If you look
But
at
yeah, I
that
think that's
Oklahoma
the difference.
game, then you look at
Did you?
the Clemson game in 2011. Yeah, Brent Venables isn't that great of a defensive coordinator, apparently.
It's just I think that they're going to have too much to try
Yeah,
to
no doubt.
replace in a year one of a head coach to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see them, have another down year and not get to the title game again. I like
Well, in
seeing
a Big
different
12
teams
year
in
where
there.
Texas and Oklahoma both have a down year, because I'm sure Texas won't be back next year.
Not
I
after
wouldn't
this
So,
think
season.
so.
you know, Big 12 is going to be wide open.
Yep, Big 12 wide open, and West Virginia, making changes to put themselves in the thick of it. I think they've got the defense to be in every game, and hopefully now they'll have the offense to be in every game as well with new faces and Graham Harrell coming in to run that offense, calling the plays, doing things his way, having more or less full autonomy over this offense. and West Virginia. I think the future's bright, and I think we're looking at potentially what could and should be Neil Brown's best season leading the Mountaineers next year, and that's what I'm looking forward to. I can't wait for spring practice to start to see Nico see this quarterback competition. And to see what this offense is going to look like. It's going to be a very interesting offseason, boys. So we'll definitely be back on here, provide more updates as we go forward. Find us here on YouTube, find the podcast on any podcast platform you like. Follow us on social media, like us on Facebook there, Country Roads Webcast, and on Twitter you can follow us at WVU Country Roads. That being said, anything you guys have here as final thoughts before we close off this season wrap-up show, WVU hires Graham Harrell edition of the Country Roads Webcast.
Excited for basketball season. That's all.
My chest is clear.
Oh yeah,
Basketball season
March Madness coming up before you know it.
Football season, it feels like.
And
goes by fast.
It does. All right, so I guess that'll pretty much do it for this edition of the Country Roads Webcast. Like I said, we'll be back throughout the off season as news occurs and things like that. Spring practice starting before you know it. So sure, we'll have more recruiting updates and other updates coming to you here as this is our season wrap up show, but also kind of serves as our first off season episode as well. But we'll be back and we'll be looking forward to it. As always, I'm your host, Jordan Cruz, for Bradley and Steven. Until next time, let's go,
If you really
Mountaineers.
wanna know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those